I don't know how we'll repair that, Xena. It's not something you can take to a blacksmith.
Oh, this thing Maurice gave me? What is this thing anyway?
The most challenging thing about the Chakram episode was the fact that Xena was inactive through most of the episode until the very end, and it was a very strange thing. It was very strange to try to conceive scenes with Xena where she was a bystander. It was a real challenge, though. You really wanted Xena to be in the thick of it. And instead, we had to rely on Gabrielle and on Maurice, occasionally on Joxer, but Joxer could only sort of stumble through fight scenes. And Eli and Xena in this episode are passive characters. You can't really engage them in fisticuffs. Of course, the other challenge of filming this episode was the fact that Lucy was pregnant at the time, and it was showing, and so we had to disguise that. And we had a limited number of hours that we could work with her. Because she was pregnant, we had to release her earlier. So we had to design scenes around getting her coverage and then being able to send her home and shooting everybody else's coverage.
My path is with Xena, helping her however I can. I'll do whatever I have to do to protect her.
With Lucy's advancing pregnancy, it forced us to give Gabrielle, push her forward as a warrior more than anything else. I mean, it really forced our hands so that her way that she was searching for all through the 4th season became parallel and in a way emulated Xena's. Just as we were taking her a different path in the 4th season, well, it was important to us so that we remained an action show, because with Lucy unable to take part in a lot of the action, we needed somebody to do it, or some of the reason the fans tune in would be gone.
I think Gabrielle became more of a fighter because Xena was pregnant, right? I think that's how it sort of evolved. I don't think there was ever supposed to be a violent Gabrielle, but I think there was a conscientious effort to make Gabrielle start fighting again. So they gave me a weapon, and then it was just a matter of letting her be a little more of an equal, don't you think, in the fighting?
I think you were bored, and we'd done the peacenik thing.
Right.
We were looking for an instrument for Gabrielle, the way Xena had her chakram, something signature, and went through tons of weapon books, and size just seemed, first of all, I think they're gorgeous as weapons. I think they're very nicely, they're just unique and beautiful to look at, but they also fit her as a person, you know. She's not big like Xena. She's a little fire plug of a fighter, and she needed size, actually, I think, fit her arm like this, you know, so that she could whirl them around, but then keep them here and then out. They just were a fit, and she got so good with them. They were a pleasure to watch her use.
Hey, you got trowels in this, didn't you? You got your little gardening forks.
My trowels. Yeah, I had the size. It was the first time, in a while that Gabrielle had had a weapon again. I think it was after the whole peace movement. And she, Rob was trying to figure out, you know, what weapon. Was thinking about going back to the staff, and then I think I mentioned a whip. No, kidding. And he's like, no, I don't think so. No, actually, I did mention the nunchucks, and he said, I think it's a little violent for Gabrielle. And
forking people, no trouble.
So I got the size, and yeah, it was funny because out of nowhere, Gabrielle knew how to use these weapons.
I thought they were dumb.
You thought they were dumb?
I thought they were so dumb.
Oh, what do you know?
Because you can't do anything with them, or can you?
Yeah, I mean, you have a few moves, and you do them over and over again. But I liked because they're pointy at the end. And then you could also, it was showy, you know, I could fling them around. Is that...
Lame weapon, man.
It's the one from...
That's the last thing I would choose, a couple of gardening
No,
forks.
I had fun with those.
Yeah.
Right now, Xena is everything that I always wanted her to be. But without her dark side, she's lost, and she's off balance.
For Xena to come back only partially herself, only half herself, so to speak, with all remembrance of violence and evil and darkness gone. It nicely interwove with the story we wanted to tell about the chakram.
It's not your memory. It's like you've lost your fire and edge.
Marbles.
Yourself.
Anytime you have a character that is not proactive in the story, whether you're an actor or a writer or a director, it's always a challenge to keep them alive. And a lot of what we did to keep her character alive in this episode was to play it off of the other characters, how they responded to her being different, and how in some ways they responded differently than they would have thought. Gabrielle, I think, was probably the most surprised that she didn't like Xena not being proactive, not being aggressive and potentially violent. That just wasn't her perception of the way that character should be. And so it was also a challenge because you wanted people to feel like there was something missing. We had to hold the audience's interest but still want the old Xena back.
I don't think that Gabrielle ever wanted Xena to be nonviolent. I think Gabrielle always just wanted Xena to be justice, you know, and what's that?
Do you think so?
I do, I think so.
I think you might have forgotten a small matter of seasons 1 and 2, actually, Renee.
No, but it was about
Not hurting
killing
people.
You know, killing people is one thing, but actually just defending the greater good is another thing.
Okay.
Unless I'm completely off and have evolved to the 6th season, but I don't think Xena could have lived a life of complete nonviolence. I mean, Gabrielle couldn't, so I don't think Xena would have been true to herself.
The others say that I'm a warrior, that I kill so that innocent people may live. They want me back the way that I was.
The balcony scene when Gabrielle makes her plea to Xena to return to the way she was, why it's important for her to have her dark side, her violent side back in order to be whole. What's interesting about that scene is it was not shot originally as part of the episode.
Send me a sign. How will I know what's right unless you do?
They flew me back to New Zealand. It was my shortest trip to New Zealand. I was there for 24 hours. I flew in, shot the day, and left that night and came back. And I was exhausted, but I was really glad that we shot that scene. I think it was a really critical scene for this particular episode, and sort of it was putting forth the whole argument of the idea of the episode of why does Xena need to be who she is.
Xena, you have this balance of lightness and darkness. Without both of those, the very best in you is defenseless.
The fact that Xena is conflicted about it that's kind of the essence of what's interesting about the series, and why when we first did the pilot episode, I had really felt that there was going to be something fascinating and interesting about this character, because she had a tortured past. She was conflicted. She was not just out to do good. She had a lot of things to make up for from her past life, and those contradictions in her character and the darker side of her character is what makes the series interesting.
I think the problem with this scene is she had no judgment. She had no light and shade. Right? She had no memory. She had no history. She had nothing informing her decisions. So that's a problem. She wanted her friend back. Her whole friend back.
Very
Does
nice.
that sound good?
Yeah, that's great.
One to me.
Xena, teaming up with Eli,
Eli is a sanctimonious stooge.
who raised the dead.
Raised the dead. A mere parlor trick.
Ares poo-poos it as a parlor trick. That's not really how Ares feels. I mean, that's what he would say to Cal. But then peel to the end of the show, towards the end, where he has a little run-in with Eli, and Ares realizes, without Eli having to say a word, that this is the future, basically. He's just grabbed a hold of a man who's the future, and Ares and his ilk are about to fade away. And Ares knows this. He realizes it.
Yeah, maybe later.
Ares touches Eli and backs off was not in the script. And I have to say that was entirely my addition to it. Part of it was just looking for something active for all the characters to do, but we wanted to say that there was some kind of a power in Eli that even Ares feared, and he wasn't aware of it until he actually touched Eli. At that point, I just said to Kevin Smith, when you put your hand on him, you feel he's got a gun under there, and you're wondering what it is he's packing at that point, that you know that there's something there that you didn't see before, and he backs off and is intimidated. Whether that was a good idea or not, it was just something that I felt was important at the time.
I'm gonna catch you around the Acropolis.
There's always been that story that the gods will eventually go. And Ares senses this is the guy who's set it all in motion.
I think that the relationship between Xena and Ares is complicated. I always like to believe that there is some sincere emotion, at least on Ares' part. I know that Kevin Smith, God rest his soul, always viewed the character as if he's just a working stiff. He has a job to do, and the job is not always fun or always pleasant, but that he felt that his character that what he did for the world was vital, and that the world couldn't exist without a god of war, and so he was just doing his job.
Or evil.
Xena standing up and facing Ares when she's naked in the hot tub, I think was just intended to be an example of her sort of naivety that she has now, of completely unable to think of anything bad being part of other people's makeup, and that Ares would be there for any reason other than out of interest for her well-being.
You know, it's strange. I know those words. I know their meaning, but somehow they have no connection. Here.
That's gotta be tough.
Xena has actually been naked in front of men before, and antagonists, like right back in the, I don't know, when we had that fish fight in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And she, again, stands up in front of Ares coming out of the hot tub. I think it's because Xena she's totally comfortable with her body, thank you very much, and she's not afraid of just letting it all hang out. Yeah. Because her fist will defend her. She doesn't need modesty. It's just a waste of time and energy.
Well, what do you mean? Because she can't remember things that make her mad? Things that fill her with hate? Well, when did you become so hard?
Ares does ask Gabrielle a very good question as to what's wrong with Xena without her dark side. And I think that was interesting because there was a lot of truth in it, and especially a lot of truth that would resonate for Gabrielle. He does then, even though I like to think he's serious about it, he also can't resist smiling at Gabrielle right after he says that, when Xena's not looking, as if to say, you know, I got you.
Xena got her memory back when they were joined because it's the joining of the light and the dark. I mean, that was what happened visually when the two chakrams were put together, and that's what happened to Xena emotionally and physically, I guess you could say, too. She became a whole person, just as the light and dark chakram became one balanced chakram. I never really thought the old chakram was that bad, although I have to tell you, the new chakram, I really liked the look of that, and I liked what the look of the chakram said, again, about balance with that yin-yang kind of thing going through it. Plus, I have to admit, it was a super-duper chakram. I mean, you got two for the price of one there. She could take it off, and I think it helped having a chakram that was more useful to her as a weapon as her pregnancy increased, you know? She was able to fight as hard without fighting as hard.
The episode had its complications and challenges because Xena was not proactive earlier in the story, but where it got to was interesting. Those moments at the end of the episode were interesting. The Ares realizing that there was a power in Eli, Ares' argument with Xena about ending the violence, and Joxer's profession of love to Gabrielle at the worst possible moment.
I'm in love with you.
But, you know, it's great. You know, it's like Dad saying, I have to tell you before you die again. You know, it just seemed like he absolutely had to tell her at that point, and it was absolutely the wrong time for her to even respond. So those are the things that I most like about the episode, seeing it again. It was that was my last episode I did of Xena, and I hope we bring the series back someday.